Hi, I'm Wendy from Shiny Happy World, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can create a parent and baby animal in the same block using one of my block patterns from one of my quilts. So this is the Yvette block from the Cuddly Cats quilt pattern, and I left Yvette normal size. She's already a somewhat smallish cat, and then I printed up another version of the templates. I reversed it so we wouldn't get two duplicate cats side by side, and I reduced it in size. So in the blog post that goes with this, I'm going to show you some photos of the pair with one at 100% and one at 50%, 60%, 70%, so you can get an idea of what the different relative sizes will actually look like, because sometimes it can be very surprising. But for right now, I am going to show you an example with the baby cat printed at 50% size. So normally I would start with the body piece when I lay them down, but this is going to make things a little tighter than usual. So what I'm going to do is start with the tail piece that goes all the way over to the side here so that we can mark that side border. Then I'm going to put her body piece in. And I can always shift these around. Nothing is permanent until I fuse it in place. But I'm going to lay her body down right next to the base of the tail. It's actually overlapped just a little bit, but when I crop the block to size, I'm going to lose a little bit off the bottom, and then when I sew it together with the other blocks, it's going to lose another 1/4 of an inch. So that will look like her tail is coming up to the side of her body. Then I have her face. And I'm probably going to tip this. I might want to tip it so that she's looking down at her baby. But for now, I'm just going to leave it like there. And I'm not going to worry about the ears or the eyes yet. I want to get this baby in place. So like I said, I did a mirror image on this side, on this, because I didn't want the two tails to come up into the face or anything weird like that. So I'm just going to temporarily set that right there. And I think I'm going to make her body, the baby, it's not going to be sitting right side by side with the mother. I think I am going to overlap it a little bit. So like she's snuggled against her mama. And so this is telling me I've got some room. I'm going to shift this over a little bit more to the middle of the block. Now that I've got the pieces in place, I can see that. And that's just going to depend on the whatever animals you're doing, how they lay out next to each other. The different body widths are going to make a big difference. So now I am going to start to think about tipping her head down, and we're going to tip the baby's head up so she's looking at her mommy. We'll just tip that up a little bit, and that means it's gonna, her tail is going to be behind her head. You could also put it in front of her head, but I'm going to put it behind her head because I think that looks more natural. Now I'm going to put some baby ears in there. One ear on this side of her head. When I cut these pieces out, one thing I forgot to point out earlier on. So normally I cut the pieces out on the solid lines, and I have a different post that shows how you work with all of my patterns for fusible adhesive. It has the seam allowance built in where this piece is going to tuck behind another piece, and I want to have part of the ear hidden. When you print it out shrunk down, that also is going to reduce the width of that seam allowance. So instead of cutting this on the solid line, which I would normally do, I cut all of these overlapping pieces with a little bit of extra seam allowance. So I just eyeballed it. It's not important that you get exactly a 1/4 of an inch, but to avoid having the chance that some pieces might pop out and fray over time, I wanted to give myself a little bit of extra. So any place that a piece was going to tuck behind another piece, like at the top of the body, it's going to tuck behind the head. So I didn't cut it directly on that solid line. I gave myself a little extra. Same thing at the bottom of the body where you're going to lose that into the seam allowance when you sew the blocks together. So anywhere where there's an overlap, you want to give yourself just a little bit of extra. Don't use the built-in seam allowance for that block, for that size, because it's really not designed for that size. So I'm moving her tail out just a little bit because just the height, the relative heights. You know what I could do also is I could just make her tail go down a little bit. So I'm going to lose part of the tail off the bottom, but that is okay. And that looks really nice to me. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the mama's, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and finish the baby's face. So at 50%, these eyes are getting pretty tiny. If you don't like working with such small applique pieces, I totally get it. I have a blog post that I'll link to from the companion. There's another video that I'll link to from the companion blog post with this that has all kinds of suggestions for other ways that you can do the eyes, and particularly when they get very small like this. There's I've got a review of all of my favorite fabric paints and fabric markers. You can just draw the eyes and the nose on. You can stitch them. I've got links to tutorials for different stitches that would work to embroider the eyes and the mouth. I've got some embroidery files, machine embroidery files, some that you can use just with a regular sewing machine, and some that you use with an embroidery machine, so depending on what you've got. I'm gonna, usually the eyes, I try and make them straight up and down, but in this case, I am gonna angle them back a little more. I really wanna make it clear that her head is angled here, and I wanna make it look like she's looking up at her mom. So now we're back into the mom. I'm gonna give her her ears. So I'm going to applique these eyes and nose, but I would not go any smaller than that. If it got any smaller, I would probably do them with fabric paint. That's my favorite alternative, the kind of fabric paint that comes out of the squeezy bottles. It leaves a nice glossy eye that no amount of picking can pick off, and I have tested it. And like I said, that blog post, that companion post that I'll link to, has got reviews of the fabric paints that I tested. And so I'm going to tip her head even a little bit more to really get in that cozy, snuggly feeling. And I'm going to turn her eyes a little bit more too. That might be a little too much. Let me see. So it's always playing with your judgment when you're modifying the pattern. Yeah, I think I'm going to tip them up just a little bit more. That was just a little too angled. All right, there we go. So we've got a mama and a baby. I'm going to take that over to the ironing board, fuse them in place, and then outline them, and that'll be all done.